Elizabeth, how's it going?
Hi, good. How are you?
Doing all right. Very excited for your session here. Excited to learn all things how to do a composting toilet the right way. So,
Yeah, awesome. Well, yeah, so I will share
okay,
my screen here.
perfect. Yep, that sounds good. And um, cool. Yeah, since we're getting going just a minute or so late, I can go ahead and I'm gonna turn off my screen and my mic, but I'll be right here if you need anything from me, and we'll let you take it away.
All right, great. Thanks so much.
Yeah, for sure. Talk to you later.
Hey, everybody. So I'm Elizabeth Pashis. I work for Throne Composting Toilet, and I'm also spent 5 years living tiny in a school bus. So I'm excited to talk to you guys about all kinds of composting toilet struggles and how to overcome them because composting toilets, I think, are a really great solution when living tiny. But first, I'll give you a little intro to me. My husband and I bought a 40-foot school bus back in 2016, and we spent 3 years traveling um, or we spent about 2.5 years converting the school bus in our backyard. And then in 2018, we hit the road with our two kids and we traveled the country for 3 years. Then we decided we were ready to settle down and in 2021 bought a piece of land in the mountains of northern Vermont and lived lived and survived through 2 winters in northern Vermont in a school bus and have just finished building our not so tiny house. Not big, but not considered tiny, and moved into it a couple months ago. So when we were just getting started with our bus, we initially chose a compost toilet because we wanted to be as off-grid as possible. We were wanting to be self-contained, and that meant minimizing water usage and maximizing toilet capacity. So if you've have experience living with a compost toilet, they're not all unicorns and rainbows, which we'll talk about more. But I really feel that the benefits vastly outweighed the challenges, and they give us so much freedom that we were looking for as we made this drastic change to our lives and went to living tiny and nomadically. They give you freedom to park your vehicle or your house out away from services, away from paved roads, away from crowds, and really kind of get get out in nature a little bit better. And it also helps you keep your budget a little bit lower because if you're traveling, you're not having to pay for dump stations. And if you're stationary, you're minimizing how much plumbing you have to do. And I know plumbing can be a major expense when building a house of any size. Then when we settled down on our property here in Vermont, the composting toilet really gave us that ability to move onto our land right away and to do it inexpensively because we could take care of all of our bathroom waste without investing in an expensive septic system right away. And as we've been here and participating in the actual composting, which we couldn't do when we were traveling, it's really allowed us to reduce our waste impact on the earth. And I just love that all those nutrients can now go back to feeding the soil rather than just being buried in a landfill somewhere. So when I started working for Tiny Wood Stove when we first started traveling, and that's actually the same group of people that has now started the Throne composting toilet business. Among our team, we've got over 50 years of pooping in buckets experience. We have used a lot of composting toilets. We've used them for many years. And this ranges from DIY toilets that we've built to commercial compost toilets that we've purchased. And so I'm really excited to share with you guys some of that gained knowledge over the years about what we know about the features, the benefits, and the pitfalls of compost toilets to help you pick and or build one that will meet your specific needs, because one size rarely fits all. Okay, so I think it kind of comes down to three most important pieces when you're trying to decide what the best compost toilet is for your needs. Um, Everyone's going to be concerned about smells. We need to consider what it takes to empty the compost toilet and what it takes to clean the compost toilet. Those are really the three most important things that I found that people will struggle with and will make people leave a compost toilet if they aren't working well. In addition to those three, I've got a couple more that I think are fairly important, but maybe not the most critical. And that's going to be the ease of installation and the comfort of the use of the toilet. So we'll talk about the smell first. Smells can totally be contained in a compost toilet, but they can also get out of hand and be really bad and pretty quickly make you want to chuck the toilet out of your house. Um, the most common reason for smells coming out of a compost toilet is not enough cover material being used. So even in the most simple compost toilet you could ever build, it's a seat sitting on top of a bucket, you can successfully eliminate smells just by using enough cover material. Um, one issue with needing to use lots of cover material is that you do have to source and store all the cover material. Plus, you're going to be emptying the bucket more frequently. So we'll cover some ways you can reduce your cover material expense use in just a minute here. But do know that all it takes to eliminate smells entirely in a compost toilet is cover material. Um, Another thing you'll see in some compost toilet is cranks to stir up the solids bin, augers to mix it up. They really aren't necessary. And I think that might be what inhibits some people from building their own compost toilet, because that's kind of a more daunting feature to put in. I found they tend to be the things that make people get rid of commercial compost toilets sometimes. They do a good job of ensuring that there's contact between all the cover material and the contents, but they can be really hard to turn. So we found with our first compost toilet that our kids could almost never turn that crank unless we had just freshly emptied the toilet. And once it got about half full, I could barely turn it. And we were calling my husband to turn the crank every time we went to the bathroom. So it wasn't very user friendly. Another thing that can really help with smells is diverting the liquids. So diverting the liquids means separating the pee from the poo, if you're not familiar with that part of compost toilets yet. Um, Diverting the liquids away from the solids, it keeps the solids bin drier. And when the solids bin is drier, it is less smelly. It also keeps the volume of material in the solids bin lower. So if only your solids are going in the solids bin, there's a lot less content going in there. And that means you need less cover material. As I mentioned earlier, sourcing and storing a whole lot of cover material can totally control the smells. But if you separate the solids from the liquids, you use less cover material, and you're still controlling the smell. And then the liquids can be much more easily emptied, which is going to allow you then for weeks or months between emptying the solids bin. And that time frame really depends on how many people are using it, how often you're using it, what you're putting in it. If realistically, I would say that a family of four should be able to go about 2 weeks between emptying a 5-gallon sized solids bin. Some people will tell you you can go much longer. Some people will tell you can go much shorter, but we've found in our 5 years of compost toilet use, it's about 2 weeks with a family of four. Now you can go longer if you don't put your toilet paper in the solids bin. So some people will keep all of their toilet paper out in like a little trash can, which they can then, burn the toilet paper or compost it, whatever you want to do with it later. If you keep it out of the solids bin, it's going to make that last a lot longer because the toilet paper adds a lot of bulk in there. The toilet paper also makes it a little bit harder for the cover material to contact the solids, which means you have to use a little bit more cover material to be able to control the smell. So if you're looking to reduce cover material usage and go longer between emptyings, keep your toilet paper in a separate bag or trash can. And then let's see, diverters are really the key component, I think, to a toilet that's easy to use and functions well. So a couple things to look for in a diverter, because they really don't all work the same. A lot of compost toilets have diverters, but there's a huge difference in performance. So I would look for a deep and steep liquids bowl. So if it is really deep and has steep walls, it's going to make it easy for the liquids to flow into it quickly. So if you're well hydrated and using your toilet, your liquids don't overflow into the solids bin. There's some compost toilets I've used that have just this tiny little 1/2 inch lip between the liquids diverter and the solids bin, and it's easy to overflow that. You just have to be well hydrated. So yeah, deep and steep bowl will keep the liquids from flowing into the solids, which will reduce stink. Another thing to look for is a really large solids opening. So while some of us might be anatomically equipped to aim our number one, pretty sure most of us don't have a lot of skill in aiming our number two. So when you've got a small target to hit, mess tends to occur more frequently with number two. So look for a big opening to make it easy to get things where they belong. And then the final thing that makes a big impact on the smells in a toilet is a vent fan. So a vent fan isn't strictly necessary, but it is a great backup. So in a compost toilet where you're using cover material, the cover material can do the entire job of eliminating smells. But if you don't want to use cover material, a vent fan can be an alternative way to remove the smells. And it also really helps when things aren't going according to plan. So maybe you've got guests and they are peeing in the solids bin and it is getting stinky, or kids aren't paying enough attention, or new cover material choice just isn't working the way you've expected. The vent fan is a great backup to just remove any unwanted smells. So I wanted to share with you guys how our thrown toilet stacks up. I mentioned earlier, we've got 50 years experience on our team, which went into the design of the toilet. And the first part of that really was the diverter, because we all recognize that that's the linchpin item. In addition to our team's experience, we sourced ideas and feedback from hundreds of people in the tiny living community to find out what they love and what they hate and what they would change about their compost toilets. This diverter, it really is, in my experience and the feedback we're getting from our customers, is the best diverter. It's got a huge solids opening. The liquids diverter is large and steep. It's steep enough that even we found men can pee standing up, which is uncommon with a lot of diverters because you just easily splash over. Here's some measurements I've got on the diverter. The solids opening is 7 inches by 9¼ inches. The liquids bowl is 6 7/8 inches if you include the little spout at the bottom, but I don't think that really contributes to its functionality. I think you end up with about 4 inches of depth between the overflow spot and the drain at the bottom, right there. The throne has, so we sell both a full toilet that you can buy fully assembled, and we also sell all the components individually so folks can DIY whatever toilet works best for their space. So the throne toilet comes with a vent fan. We also sell it by itself. It is optional because, like I said, you don't have to use a vent fan, but it's great for that to be available. We do recommend cover material in our toilets. Like I said, that's the best way to control smells. So we recommend using that. And the large solids opening, another benefit of that is it's easy to put the cover material in. Putting it into a small hole is a little bit harder. So yeah. Okay, next part about composting toilets that you really want to identify your needs on is the emptying. So this is the chore. Emptying the compost toilet is the chore part, not the use. And so let's talk about taking out the poo. A couple things to consider. Consider the weight of what needs to be dumped. If the whole toilet has to be dumped upside down, that's going to be a lot more physically challenging and be a much higher potential for accidents. Versus if it's a bucket or a bin of some sort that needs to be removed and can be either taken out of the house and dumped or dumped into a trash bag inside the house. Another consideration is whether you're going to bag the solids or not. So some composting toilets give you the ability to line your solids bin with a bag. Really, any of them that don't use like a crank or an auger or some sort. Any ones that you just fill, you could bag your solids. So all you need to do is lift out the bag. I would double bag it. I was at a tiny house festival showing my bus, and some folks parked right next to us were taking out their toilet contents just before the show started, and their biodegradable bag just burst all over their floor right before the tiny house festival started. So that was awful. So yeah, double bag your salads. Another consideration is the frequency. So a larger container is going to give you more time between emptyings. Then taking out the pee. So you've got your solids taken out, and then let's look at taking out the liquids. So again, frequency. How big is the jug? If it's going into a larger jug, you can go longer. We've found that a 2-gallon jug gets our family of 4 a maximum of 2 days, and I'm pretty sure that's with my husband going outside some of the time. So that's for 4 people is going to fill 2 gallons in 2 days. Some people also will you can plumb it down to a larger tank underneath your structure, or maybe you've got a septic system on site or some sort of other leach system. You can plumb that. Some toilets can be plumbed to the outside and you don't have to empty the liquids jug, and that's really handy. One thing to consider if you are plumbing the liquids is use a large drain line. I had one toilet that had a very narrow, maybe a 1/4 inch drain line, and snaking the gelled up urine scale out of that was not a fun chore that I never ever want to do that again. Um, let's see, consider the weight of emptying the liquids jugs as well. So I say larger is better because you can go longer. It also gets heavy. So I think a 2-gallon jug of pee is going to weigh about 4.5 pounds. So that can be a consideration for folks who can't lift as heavy things. And preventing overflowing is another consideration with pee. For anybody who's lived with a compost toilet, you've probably overflowed the liquids before. And if you haven't, kudos to you, because almost everyone I know has their like horror stories of overflowing the liquids. You can prevent it by being rigorous at checking the levels, but you can't account for what other people will do, or maybe you tend to be a little too optimistic about your ability to make it through the night without overflowing. I always want to say like, just one more pee. I can get one more pee in there, and you usually can't. So it being easy to see when the toilet needs to be emptied is a really important feature on a compost toilet. So how the throne stacks up here. We kept the design really simple. So complicated designs were something a lot of us didn't like about other compost toilets we've used. So the throne toilet is, like I mentioned, it's a series of components that you can purchase a la carte, or you can buy the whole toilet itself if you don't want to build a toilet. But every component is easily removed from the toilet, which is handy when you're emptying. Everything just lifts up and out. Nothing has to be turned over or sideways or unlatched. The liquids jug comes out with a handle. The solids bin comes out with a handle. The diverter just lifts straight out of the toilet as well. Here's another picture of the throne toilet with the solids bin and the liquids jug inside, and the diverter sitting to the side after it's been lifted out. One thing I'm so excited to have in my compost toilet now is this level alarm. So there are only a couple toilets on the market right now who are incorporating a level alarm to let you know when the liquids are full, but that is a great feature. So that means you don't have to constantly check to make sure you're not about to overflow, or remember when you last emptied the liquids bin. With the throne, a red light comes on and glows through the urine diverter, and it is bright enough that you can see it during the daytime too. Let's go back. I had one more. So if you do plumb your diverter directly into a tank, I mentioned that before, and that the throne diverter, the tube at the bottom is has a 1 inch outer diameter, so that you can hook up 1 inch tubing to plumb directly into a gray tank or septic system or other leach system. And then finally, if you do overflow the liquids jug because I don't know, the light's malfunctioning or the battery dies or you just lost track of how many times you peed after the light came on, you've got about 3 to 4 Ps after that light comes on. If that does happen, we've built the base to this toilet so that it can catch 96 ounces of liquid before reaching the level of the mounting holes. So there's a backup to the backup because it is so frequent that people overflow their liquids. And for the third most important thing to pay attention to when you're shopping for or designing your compost toilet is how to keep it clean. So I was shocked how difficult and impossible it is to clean some composting toilets on the market. Before I built my own DIY toilet with our thrown diverter, I mean, there are tiny cracks and crevices in areas that, the number one and number two go. And it's so impossible to clean those. There are actually some toilets with areas that the liquids go that you physically cannot access. There's no way to get to them. So if you've owned one of these toilets, I can almost guarantee you've found yourself trying to scrub it clean with a toothbrush through the holes, just to realize there's no way to get there. And I didn't know this before I owned a compost toilet, but urine scale, it's like dried pee essentially, builds up that anywhere urine regularly goes and dries. It's like kind of crystallization of the drying urine bits. Um, so it's really hard to clean. So when urine scale builds up, it's really hard to clean. So if you're looking at a toilet or designing yours, consider all those places that urine may get. And how easy is it going to be to scrub or soak that area? Because there's going to be some buildup at some point. I found that on the thrown diverter, the one place I get buildup is at the very end of the liquids drain, because that's where it ends, so it drips off there, and I guess there's enough that kind of hangs out, kind of like icicles. It's a really gross visual. And it does build up there. So that's where I tend to find myself needing to clean. Another thing I would not recommend is thin drain lines. I think I mentioned that earlier. Don't use thin drain lines if you are draining to another remote tank. And make sure all the materials on the toilet are very smooth. If you're building your own toilet, I know a lot of folks build with wood, and I did myself too. But if you are building with wood, in the event of disasters and spills, it's going to be pretty hard to get that clean. So maybe consider epoxying it or coating it with multiple coats of some sort of waterproofing paint or something to make it a lot easier to clean. The smoother, the better, because you're going to want to be able to wipe it down. So how the throne stacks up here, like I mentioned, we kept it really simple. Every component is removable, which means it's also soakable. There's no inaccessible areas. When I've needed to clean the urine scale that has built up on the outlet drain of my diverter, I've soaked it in a bin with like some OxyClean. I've heard things like Rockin' Green diaper detergent works really well for cleaning off built up urine scale. If you've got a compost toilet now and are tearing your hair out trying to get that scale off, try OxyClean or Rockin' Green because it did a really good job for me. So yeah, every component is removable. It's all smooth plastic, very wipeable because your toilet needs to be easy to clean. And finally, a couple other points that are maybe not quite as critical. It's installation and comfort. The installation got plumbing, electricity, and vent fan. Those are things you're going to want to consider. how much DIY capability you've got for those things. And then the comfort. The toilet height is going to be a comfort consideration you want to think about. A high toilet gives you more capacity to store liquids and solids longer, but it does mean you're kind of not in a great ergonomic position for pooping. So I like to recommend folks get something like a squatty potty or even build one that can double as storage for their cover material. And then the seat design. Some compost toilets build their seats on based on a standard regular toilet seat design, which we did for the throne seat. And some other compost toilets have very similar toilet seat designs to regular toilets as well. But I found some have very narrow seats and are kind of weird to sit on and take some getting used to. Okay, so that covers all of those things. We have a sale going on for the Throne toilet right now. We've got $100 off during this month. Brings your price down to $628 for the full toilet. And we're also offering a free color upgrade with all those fun colors listed above so you can have a really fun and unique bathroom. I have run out of time, so we've got like 4 minutes left, and I'm going to stop screen sharing and see if anybody's got questions in the chat. Also, please feel free to email us at support@Throne Composting Toilet, and we're happy to help you out with any longer term questions. How durable is it for cold months? Are you referring to the plastic? Plastic's really durable. My Throne was in my school bus, living in Vermont winters where parts of my bus were nice and warm, but the bathroom was frozen during the winter. We had to cut our plumbing in the winter because everything just froze up. So I'd say very durable. My toilet went down to temperatures of -25 when we left town in the winter. What kind of bags do I recommend for the Throne? I use just a regular tall kitchen trash bag. You can use compostable bags if you're composting with them. I don't like to put compost bags in my toilet or in my compost just because I don't know, it seems to just sit around in there a lot, but a lot of people are successful with it. But yeah, just a regular kitchen trash bag has worked well for me, especially when I was traveling and I had to, bag that up and go dispose of it somewhere. Where do we ship from? Idaho. Where do you dispose of it? I guess it depends whether you're on the road or stationary. So I'm living stationary now, and so I have a compost pile, and therefore my toilet contents are no longer waste. They're just continuing their nutrient cycle. And so I compost in a large 4x4 bin that I built with pallets. And then each year I start a new pile and let the old pile sit for 2 years before it's used. Then if you're on the road, it can be different everywhere you go. Toilet contents can be disposed of in conventional waste streams like dumps and things. Consider what people do with diapers. But I'd recommend double bagging the contents just for respect to sanitation workers. Nobody wants that getting ripped open while they're handling it. What kind of warranties do we offer on the items? Off the top of my head, I cannot remember what our warranty is, but it is on our website, thronecompostingtoilet.com. For food garden or flower garden, that is a personal preference. Some people don't like to grow food with humanure compost. Some people do. I highly recommend the book, The Humanure Handbook or Compost Toilet Handbook by Joseph Jenkins. He's definitely a subject matter expert and was really, I don't know, inspirational for me in settling down and starting our humanure pile. If I missed any questions, I apologize. I think I maybe addressed all the ones that I've seen in here. But yeah, feel free to email us at support@thronecompostingtoilet.com. You check out our website. You can also find us on all the social medias at Throne Composting Toilet as well. Thank you.
Awesome. Yeah, thank you so much for the presentation, talking us all through it, and definitely seems like you put a lot of thought into the design and everything from being able to clean every single nook and cranny and all those different details that the average person who's just shopping for a composting toilet doesn't think about. So very
Yeah.
thoughtful there. So we really appreciate it, and yeah, everybody go give Throne some love. Go check out their website, thronecompostingtoilets.com, and yeah, thank you so much for the presentation today.
Yeah. Thank you. Thanks for having me.
Yep, absolutely.